The new CTO called my life's work garbage and fired me to save a buck, thinking I was just another disposable employee. He didn't check the paperwork, so I let the clock run out, the license expire, and watched their entire supply chain crumble into dust. This is where the story truly begins, and you won't want to miss what happens. Make sure you're subscribed to see it through to the end. We're always curious. Where in the world are you all watching from today? Let us know in the comments. I knew the exact moment the company was doomed. It wasn't when the stock dipped 3 points in a single afternoon, and it wasn't when they replaced the breakroom coffee with some fair trade organic sludge that tasted like distilled disappointment and topsoil. It was the moment Jard walked in. Jard was the new chief technology officer, a 28-year-old venture capital experiment wrapped in a fitted Patagonia vest and smelling aggressively of sandalwood and unearned confidence. He walked into the glass-walled conference room like he was Moses parting the Red Sea. Except the Red Sea in this instance was just a dozen tired, middle-aged engineers praying for severance packages or a sudden meteor strike. I was sitting in the back corner, nursing a styrofoam cup of that lukewarm bean water, watching him survey the room. I have been here 6 years. In tech years, that makes me a prehistoric fossil. I am the ghost in the machine. I am the reason the servers don't catch fire and melt into slag when Black Friday traffic hits. But to Jard, looking over the rim of his blue light glasses, I was just a woman in a gray hoodie who looked like she needed a nap and a cigarette. "Listen up, team," Jard started, clapping his hands together like a performing seal asking for a fish. The sound echoed sharply against the glass walls. "I've been reviewing the architecture, and honestly, it's a mess. It's spaghetti code. It's legacy garbage." He didn't just say the words. He spat them out like they tasted bad. He clicked a remote, and a slide appeared on the projector behind him. It was a bunch of meaningless circles and arrows connecting to nothing, a diagram that looked like a football play drawn by a toddler on Adderall. "We're pivoting," he announced, puffed up with self-importance. "We are moving to a microservices-first, AI-driven ecosystem by Q3. We need to shed the dead weight." I squinted at the screen. He was pointing a laser pointer at the central node of his diagram, a red X over the core logic gate of our entire logistics platform. That legacy garbage he was talking about, that was quantum ops. That was my baby. That was the code I wrote during the 2020 logistics nightmare, fueled by panic, insomnia, and the crushing weight of a global supply chain collapse. It was the code that literally saved this company from bankruptcy, when the rest of the world's logistics were falling like a house of cards in a hurricane. "Excuse me," I said. My voice was raspy. I hadn't spoken in a meeting in 3 months because nobody usually asked for my opinion until something was burning. Heads turned. The junior developers looked terrified. They knew who I was. They knew what that code did. "That garbage handles 90% of our vendor compliance," I said, leaning forward. "You delete that node, and you're not just pivoting, you're lobotomizing the company. You won't be able to process a single invoice." Jard turned to me. He had that smile, the one that doesn't reach the eyes, the one practiced in a mirror while listening to Gary Vaynerchuk podcasts on 2x speed. He looked at my messy bun, my faded Nostromo crew t-shirt, and then checked his Apple Watch as if I were wasting his precious time. "And you are?" he asked, feigning ignorance. He knew exactly who I was. I was the line item on the budget that the CFO couldn't explain but refused to cut. I was the anomaly. "I'm Emily," I said, keeping it simple. "I built the backbone you're trying to surgically remove." Jard chuckled. It was a wet, condescending sound that made my skin crawl. "Right, Emily, look, sweetheart." The word hung in the air like a fart in a crowded elevator. Sweetheart. "I appreciate what you did in the old days," he continued, his tone dripping with patronizing slime. "But we're not running a history museum here. We're building the future. And frankly, your monolithic code is holding us hostage. We need agility. We need velocity. You don't need whatever this patchwork is, sweetheart. We need to move fast and break things." The betrayal was worse than the incompetence. It wasn't just that he was wrong, it was that he was erasing 6 years of my life with a buzzword. He looked at me and saw an obstacle, a relic. He didn't see the architect. "We're going to start sunsetting the old modules effective immediately," Jard declared, turning his back to me to admire his reflection in the glass whiteboard. "HR will be doing some restructuring too. Aligned with the new vision. Restructuring, corporate speak for firing the people who actually know how the lights work." I didn't argue. I didn't throw my coffee at him, even though the urge was strong enough to make my hand twitch around the cup. I just sat there, watching him pontificate about synergies and bandwidth. My heart wasn't even racing. That's the scary part. When you've been in the trenches this long, you don't panic when the rookie pulls the pin on the grenade. You just check your watch and calculate the blast radius. Jard wrapped up the meeting with a loud, "Let's crush it, team," and stormed out, likely to go drink a kale smoothie and high-five himself in the mirror for his bravery. I stayed seated for a moment, finishing my cold coffee. The room emptied quickly, the other engineers keeping their heads down, terrified that making eye contact with me would somehow infect them with my redundancy. In corporate America, getting fired is contagious. If you stand too close to the victim, management might decide you're part of the disease. One of the junior devs, a kid named Mike who had trained under me and whom I had taught not to delete production databases on Fridays, lingered by the door. He looked over at me with wide, panicked eyes. "Emily," he whispered, glancing down the hall to make sure Jard wasn't lurking. "Are you okay? He's going to cut you. I saw the list on the printer." I crushed the styrofoam cup in my hand and tossed it into the recycling bin with a perfect arc. "Don't worry about me, Mike," I said, standing up and smoothing out my hoodie. "Just do me a favor. If you see me walking out with a box later this week, don't help me carry it. Just go back to your desk and make sure your resume is up to date." "But the code," Mike stammered, "if he turns off quantum ops." "He won't turn it off, Mike," I said quietly. "He doesn't know how. He's just going to stop paying for the maintenance." I walked back to my cubicle, my leased workspace, technically, and logged into my private admin console. Not the company one. The one hosted on a private server in a basement in Estonia that I pay $50 a month for. Jard wanted a revolution. He was about to get a revelation. See, back in 2018, when this company was nothing but a chaotic startup with 3 lawsuits and a dream, they couldn't afford me. I was a mercenary developer with a daily rate that made CFOs weep. So, my lawyer, a shark named Heavy Metal Dave who operates out of a strip mall next to a vape shop, came up with a different arrangement. I didn't sign an employment contract. I signed a licensing agreement. I incorporated my own LLC, Ironclad Logic, and I licensed the Quantum Ops platform to them. Think of it like Adobe or Microsoft. You don't buy the software, you buy the right to use it. And like any landlord renting out a penthouse to a bunch of rowdy college kids, I kept a key. Jard didn't know that. Jard saw a middle-aged woman with dark circles under her eyes and assumed I was a legacy hire, some diversity quota from a bygone era. He thought he was firing a rusted cog. He didn't realize he was trying to evict the landlord while still living in the house. I looked at the date on my phone. My licensing contract renewed automatically every quarter unless contested. The next payment was due in exactly 4 days. Paragraph 4 of my contract was very specific about what happens if the licensee attempts to modify, reverse engineer, or disparage the integrity of the provided software. And Paragraph 6 was the nuclear option. I sat at my desk, the hum of the air conditioning the only sound in my ears. I felt a strange calm settling over me, the kind of calm you feel before a storm breaks. Jard thought he held all the cards because he had the title and the corner office. But he had forgotten one crucial thing. He was renting the ground he stood on. To understand why this hurt so much, why I wasn't just going to take my severance and leave, you have to understand 2020. While the rest of the world was baking sourdough bread and learning TikTok dances, I was living in the server room. The pandemic had shattered the global supply chain. Ports were closed, trucks were stalled, and our company, which handles logistics for essential medical supplies, was on the brink of total collapse. The existing software couldn't handle the rerouting. It crashed every hour. For 3 months, I slept under my desk. I ate vending machine crackers. I didn't see my family. I wrote the Quantum Ops core from scratch, fueled by panic and a desperate need to keep goods moving. It was a masterpiece of graph theory and efficient caching. It saved the company. The CEO, Richard, bought his third boat that year with the bonus he got from my code. I got a plaque and a Starbucks gift card. I didn't mind the lack of glory. I loved the code. It was mine. And now this boy, this child in a vest, was calling it garbage. The freeze-out started subtly, like black mold in a bathroom wall. First, it was the calendar invites. The weekly architecture sync dropped off my Outlook. Then, the strategy alignment meeting vanished. I was sitting in my cubicle listening to the muffled sounds of laughter coming from the glass-walled conference room 10 feet away. Through the glass, I saw Jard holding court. He was erasing my diagrams, complex functional flowcharts of data logic, and replacing them with buzzwords like holistic synergy and cloud-native mindset. It's funny how fast you become invisible. 6 years of 80-hour weeks, 6 years of waking up at 3:00 a.m. to patch a server leak, and suddenly I was a ghost. Then came Kim, the HR rep, followed by the new guy. Jard introduced him on Tuesday. Team, meet Tyler. He's our new product evangelist. He's going to be spearheading the transition to the new stack. Tyler looked like he was 12. He was wearing pristine white sneakers that had never touched a dirty server room floor. He came over to my desk holding a matcha latte, looking like a puppy who just peed on the rug but thinks he's a good boy. "Hey, Emily, right?" Tyler said, beaming. "Jard told me you're the, legacy historian. I'd love to pick your brain about the old code before we deprecate it." Historian, deprecate. The insults were getting creative. I swiveled my chair around slowly. "Tyler, do you know what a load balancer is?" He blinked, his smile faltering. "Well, yeah, concept-wise, we use Oz for that, right? It's all serverless now, isn't it?" I turned back to my screens. Serverless just means the server is someone else's problem. It doesn't mean magic sky pixie dust. It means hardware running in a warehouse in Virginia that melts if you don't optimize your queries. Good luck, Tyler. He wandered off, looking confused. I almost felt bad for him. Almost. He was walking into a minefield with a map drawn by a narcissist. By Thursday, my access to the staging environment was revoked. I got a generic system email, permissions updated by admin J. Doe. I didn't fight it. I didn't storm into Jard's office demanding answers. I simply opened my personal laptop, my trusty, beat-up Lenovo that held the keys to the kingdom, and checked the bank account for Ironclad Logic LLC. It was the first of the month. The quarterly licensing fee for the Quantum Ops core platform was due at midnight. Usually, the old CFO, a guy named Marcus who actually understood how contracts worked, had it on auto-pay. But Marcus had been restructured last month too. I refreshed the page, no pending transaction. I refreshed it again an hour later, nothing. I sat there, the blue light of the monitor reflecting in my glasses. It was happening. They were ghosting the payment. In their arrogance, they assumed that since I was sitting in a cubicle collecting a salary, which was actually just a retainer fee disguised as payroll for tax simplicity on their end, they didn't need to pay the vendor invoice. They thought they owned me. Therefore, they thought they owned the code. I pulled up the contract. Clause 3.1, Payment Obligations. Failure to remit licensing fees within 24 hours of the due date constitutes a material breach. Clause 3.2, Cure Period. There is no cure period for willful non-payment or unauthorized modification of the source material. Jard had already violated the unauthorized modification clause, by trying to patch his new microservices on top of my core without my API keys. And now, he was about to violate the payment clause. I could have walked into his office. I could have warned him. I could have said, "Hey, Slick, you're about to default on the software that runs your entire inventory system." But then I remembered the way he looked at me. Sweetheart. I remembered the way he laughed when he said, "Legacy garbage." So I let the clock tick. At 4:00 p.m. on Friday, the Outlook notification chimed. It was the sound of the executioner's axe hitting the chopping block. Subject: quick sync from Human Resources location. Meeting room B attendees. Jard, CTO, Brenda, HR, Emily. Quick sync. That was the corporate euphemism for get your things. It was the classic move. Do it at the end of the day on a Friday so the employee can't cause a scene in front of the team, and the rest of the staff has the weekend to forget they ever existed. I didn't panic. Panic is for people who don't have a plan. Panic is for people who haven't spent the last 6 years anticipating every possible failure point in a system, including the human ones. I simply closed my email client and started packing. I didn't have much. I grabbed a few framed photos of my dogs, my lucky screwdriver set that I'd used to fix a rack mount in 2019, and a small succulent that was clinging to life despite the aggressive air conditioning. Then, I turned to my company-issued laptop. Most people just delete their personal files. Some might empty. The trash bin. I ran a military-grade scrubber on the drive. I didn't do it because I had anything to hide. I did it because I am a professional, and professionals don't leave digital fingerprints on hardware that is about to be handed over to a hostile entity. I watched the progress bar crawl across the screen, overwriting every sector with zeros. It was meditative. While the scrubber ran, I opened my personal phone and checked the bank account for Ironclad Logic LLC one last time. Still zero. They had officially missed the window. The breach was no longer theoretical, it was factual. They were currently running my software on borrowed time. I stood up, put on my jacket, and grabbed the manila folder I'd brought from home that morning. Inside was the original contract, signed in wet ink by the company founder back when we were working out of a garage. I had highlighted the relevant clauses in neon yellow, just to make it easy for Jard. I walked past the rows of open-plan desks. The office was buzzing with the low-hum energy of a Friday afternoon. People were chatting about weekend plans, about brunch spots, about hiking trips. They didn't know that the floor was about to drop out from under them. I stopped at Mike's desk. He was staring at his screen, pretending to debug a CSS file. "Hey," I said softly. He jumped, spinning around. "Emily, is it?" "Yeah," I said, keeping my voice low. "I'm heading in now. Listen to me carefully, Mike. On Monday morning, the dashboard is going to throw a specific error code. It's going to say error 402. Do you know what HTTP 402 stands for?" Mike frowned, searching his memory. 404 is not found. 403 is forbidden. I don't think I've ever seen a 402. "Exactly," I said, offering a tight smile. "It's a reserved code. It means payment required. If anyone asks you what's happening, you tell them it's a server-side authentication failure and you don't have the clearance to fix it. Do not try to bypass it. Do not try to patch it. If you touch the core logic, the system interprets it as a tamper attempt and locks the database encryption keys. You'll lose the customer data forever." Mike's face went pale. "Emily, what did you do?" "I didn't do anything, Mike," I said, patting his shoulder. "I just built a system that expects to be paid for its labor. Keep your head down." I walked away before he could ask any more questions. I could feel his eyes burning into my back as I headed toward the glass fishbowl of Meeting Room B. Meeting Room B was designed so everyone could see your shame. It was a glass box near the elevators, perfectly positioned to maximize the humiliation of whoever was getting the axe. Jard was there, of course. He was leaning against the wall with his arms crossed, one leg crossed over the other, looking like he was posing for the cover of Forbes 30 Under 30. He was wearing that vest, the fleece one that signaled I'm outdoorsy but also ruthless. Sitting at the small circular table was Brenda from HR. Brenda was a nice woman who communicated exclusively in sad smiles and pamphlets about Cobra insurance. She looked like she wanted to be anywhere else, possibly dead. "Have a seat, Emily," Brenda said, her voice soft and soothing, like she was talking to a spooked horse. I sat. I placed my manila folder on the table with a heavy thud. Jard eyed the folder suspiciously, then smirked. He probably thought it was a desperate attempt to show him project charts to save my job. He pushed off the wall and took the seat opposite me. "So," Jard started, bypassing Brenda entirely. "We've been evaluating the team structure, and as we move toward this high-velocity, cloud-native future, we're finding that your skill set just doesn't align with the trajectory of the new company vision." "Trajectory," I repeated, nodding slowly. "Like a missile into a mountain." Jard's jaw tightened. "We're terminating your employment effective immediately. Brenda has the paperwork, standard severance, 2 weeks' pay. We'll need your badge and laptop." Brenda slid a stack of papers across the table. "We also require you to sign this NDA and non-disparagement agreement to receive the severance," she added, looking down at her hands. "It just states that you won't discuss internal company matters or speak negatively about the leadership." I didn't touch the papers. I looked at Jard. "Just to be clear," I said, my voice steady, sounding deeper than usual in the small, acoustic nightmare of a room. "You are terminating our professional relationship completely. Is that correct?" "That's what fired means, sweetheart," Jard snapped. The mask of the cool, collected leader was slipping. He wanted me out. He wanted my salary budget so he could hire 3 more Tylers to sit around and drink matcha. "Okay," I said. I reached into my pocket and pulled out my badge. I slid it across the table. Then I took the company laptop out of my bag and placed it next to the badge. "Hey, I'm no longer an employee. Done." "Good," Jard said, standing up. "Security will escort you out." "Wait," I said. I placed my hand firmly on the manila folder. "We're done with the employment part. Now we need to discuss the vendor relationship." Jard frowned, pausing halfway out of his chair. "What are you talking about?" I opened the folder. Inside was the licensing agreement for the Quantum Ops Core platform. I spun it around so they could read it. "I don't work for you, Jard. I never really did. My company, Ironclad Logic, licenses the technology that runs your procurement, your logistics, and your vendor payments. I was just part of the package, on-site support included in the premium tier." Jard laughed. He actually laughed. He picked up the contract, glanced at the cover page, and tossed it back down like it was a napkin. This is some old paperwork from the startup days. We own everything you wrote while you were here. Intellectual property assignment. It's standard. We own the code." "Actually," I said, tapping paragraph 4 with my index finger. "Read it. All code, architecture, and algorithms remain the sole property of the licensor, Ironclad Logic. The licensee, Quantum Ops, Inc., is granted a non-exclusive, revocable right to use the software, contingent upon timely payment and adherence to usage guidelines." I watched his eyes scan the paragraph. I saw the moment the words hit his retinas, but his brain refused to process them. It was too absurd for him. In his world, developers were cogs. Companies owned everything. The idea that the quiet woman in the hoodie owned the engine of his sports car was impossible. "This is bullshit," he spat. "You were on payroll, that voids this. Check with legal." "I was on a retainer taxed as a 1099 contractor for the first 2 years," I explained calmly. "Then moved to a W-2 structure for administrative convenience per a specific addendum signed by the founder. But the IP rights, those never transferred. Ironclad Logic still holds the copyright registration." I stood up, towering over the table. "Here's the situation, Jard. You just fired the on-site support. That's fine. I was tired of the coffee anyway. but you also missed the quarterly licensing payment yesterday. That's a breach. I'm not paying you a dime, Jard hissed. Get out before I call the cops. Okay, I said. I closed the folder and tucked it under my arm. I'm leaving. But since you just fired the only person who knows how to keep the engine running, and you're refusing to pay the license fee, I'd say you have about 48 hours before the grace period ends. Get out, he yelled, pointing at the door. I looked at Brenda, whose mouth was hanging open. Brenda, you might want to print out hard copies of the payroll data, just a friendly tip. I walked out. I didn't look back. I walked past my old desk, past Tyler, who was aggressively typing nothing, past the break room. I walked out into the parking lot, the air thick and humid. I lit a cigarette, my first in 6 months, and inhaled deeply. It tasted like freedom. I drove straight to the liquor store. Not the nice one with the wine tasting station, but the one with bulletproof glass and a cashier named Sal who doesn't judge when you buy a handle of whiskey at 4:45 p.m. on a Friday. I bought a bottle of Old Crow. It tastes like gasoline and bad decisions, which felt appropriate for the occasion. Back at my apartment, a one-bedroom that smelled like nag champa and soldering iron, I set up my command center. I wasn't going to hack them. Hacking is illegal. What I was doing was strictly administrative enforcement of a binding contract. I opened my personal laptop and logged into the Ironclad Logic Remote Admin panel. It communicated with the Quantum Ops servers via a heartbeat signal. Every hour, their server pinged mine, "Am I still allowed to exist?" And for 6 years, my server replied, "Yes, carry on." On my screen, the status lights were all green. Inventory module, active. Vendor API, active. Payroll gateway, active. I navigated to the license status tab. Current status, grace period. Grace period ends T-minus 48 hours. Jard had called my bluff. He thought the contract was a prop. He thought I was just a bitter old woman waving paper around. He didn't understand that the code I wrote was paranoid. I wrote it that way because I knew people like him existed. The software verified its license against the blockchain. It was immutable. I changed the setting from grace period to strict enforcement. Then I queued up a command, revoke license key 001. I didn't hit enter yet. I wanted to give them the weekend. Let them enjoy their mimosas. Let Jard brag to his brunch friends about how he trimmed the fat at the office. The system was designed to do a hard check at 8:00 a.m. Monday morning, right when the transaction volume spiked. I sat back, poured a glass of whiskey, no ice, and waited. The weekend passed in a blur of calming herbal tea laced with Old Crow and a marathon of It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia. I slept past 6:00 a.m. for the first time in years. Sunday night, I hit enter. Monday 8:03 a.m. The first text came in. It wasn't from Jard. It was from the automated PagerDuty bot, which I had forgotten to unsubscribe from. Alert, save 1, critical outage, main database unresponsive, error code 402. At 8:15 a.m., my phone rang. Unknown number. I let it go to voicemail. At 8:30 a.m., Mike texted me, "OMG, everything is down, everything. The dashboard just says, please contact administrator." Jard is screaming at the servers. He literally kicked a rack. I smiled, eating a piece of cold toast. Kicking the hardware. The universal sign of a man who has no idea how software works. At 9:00 a.m., the phone rang again. This time the caller ID said Quantum Ops HQ. I picked up, put it on speaker, and set it on the table while I watered my succulent. "Hello," I answered, my voice groggy, feigning sleep. "Emily, this is Jard." His voice was an octave higher than usual. It sounded tight, like he was being strangled by his own vest. "Who?" "Jard, the CTO. Look, we have a situation. The system is down, all of it. We think it's a logic bomb. Did you leave something running?" "I don't work there anymore, Jard," I said, spraying the plant. I returned my laptop. I have no access. Don't give me that, he shouted. I could hear panic in the background, phones ringing, people yelling. The error message, it says license invalid. What did you do? Oh, I said, acting out a dawning realization. The license? Yeah, I told you about that on Friday. Did you pay the invoice? The invoice? I told you we're not paying that. It's extortion. It's a contract, Jard. And since you didn't pay, and since you fired the on-site admin, the software has reverted to its default state, which is off. Turn it back on, he demanded. Right now, or I will sue you into the ground. I will ruin you. Jard, I said, my voice dropping to that cold, steel tone I used when training interns. You are currently attempting to use unauthorized intellectual property. My lawyer is drafting a cease and desist as we speak. Furthermore, if you attempt to bypass the lock, that is a violation of the Digital Millennium Copyright Act. That is a federal crime. Do you look good in an orange jumpsuit? It might clash with your vest. There was a silence on the other end, a heavy, terrified silence. Then I heard a muffled voice in the background. It sounded like the legal counsel. I heard the words, "She's right," and "liability." Just fix it, Jard pleaded, his bluster evaporating into thin air. We're losing $10,000 a minute. That sounds like a you problem, I said. I'm unemployed. I have a lot of free time, but I don't do charity work for companies that fire me. What do you want? I want you to put the CEO on the phone, I said. He's in a board meeting. Then drag him out, I replied, checking the time on my microwave. Because in about 10 minutes, the vendor auto pay system is going to try to wire payments to your suppliers. And since the encryption keys are locked, it's going to fail. Your supply chain will officially be dead by lunch. Hold on, he gasped. I heard the phone fumbling. I heard running footsteps. I took another sip of coffee. I wasn't just twisting the knife. I was showing them the anatomy of the wound. They thought technology was magic. They thought it just happened. They forgot that people built it. People with mortgages and pride and contracts. A new voice came on the line. It was deep, booming, but currently shaking with a tremor of suppressed rage. It was Richard, the CEO, the man who had bought his third boat while I was patching the 2020 holes. Emily, Richard said, what the hell is going on? Morning, Richard, I said pleasantly. I believe your CTO evicted your landlord, and now you're locked out of the house. Richard tried to play the "we're a family" card immediately. It's the last refuge of a scoundrel with a falling stock price. Emily, look, emotions are high, Richard said, his voice dripping with fake empathy, the kind they teach in executive leadership seminars. Jard made a mistake. He's young. He didn't understand the nuances of your arrangement. But we can fix this. Just turn the servers back on. Come in and we'll discuss a raise. A big one. We'll get you a new title, VP of Architecture. How does that sound? I was sitting on my porch now, feet up on the railing, watching my neighbor, Old Man Jenkins, wrestle with his lawnmower. He was winning, unlike Richard. I don't want a raise, Richard, I said, watching a squirrel navigate the power lines. And I don't want my job back. That bridge didn't just burn, it evaporated. You let a 28-year-old amateur dismantle my team and insult my life's work. We are way past titles. Then what? What is this? Blackmail? It's a vendor dispute, I corrected sharply. You are currently in possession of proprietary software that you haven't paid for. Since you terminated the support contract, I am exercising my right to terminate the license. You have two options. I paused. I let the silence stretch until it became uncomfortable. I could hear Richard breathing heavily on the other end. Option A, I continued. You migrate to a new system. Jard seems to think he can build a cloud-native AI ecosystem, or whatever buzzword salad he spit out on Friday. Go ahead, build it. It took me 6 years to build Quantum Ops. Maybe he can do it in 6 hours. Good luck with the FDA compliance modules, though. Those are tricky. We can't do that, Richard snapped. We're dead in the water without your platform. We have trucks sitting in loading bays in 3 time zones. Option B, I said. You purchase a one-time perpetual license for the source code. Meaning, you buy Ironclad Logic's IP, you own it, I walk away. You get the keys, the documentation, everything. You never see me again. Fine, Richard said instantly. Fine, we'll buy it. How much? 50,000, 100. I laughed. It was a dry, raspy sound that startled the squirrel on the lawn. Richard, you're losing 10 grand a minute. You processed $300 million through my code last year. 100 grand buys you a consultancy firm's PowerPoint presentation, not the engine of your company. How much, Emily? 2.6 million, I said. That's insane, Richard roared, the audio clipped on the phone. That's extortion. That's the valuation, I said calmly. I did the math. It's exactly 1% of the revenue my code saved you during the pandemic, plus a nuisance fee for having to listen to Jard call me sweetheart. And considering the alternative is bankruptcy, I'd say it's a bargain. I won't pay it. Okay, good luck with the migration. You can't do this. Oh, and Richard, I added, glancing at my laptop screen. The Data Vault export protocol initiates in 59 minutes. If the license isn't renewed or transferred, the system automatically purges customer data to comply with privacy laws. You know, GDPR and all that. Wouldn't want to keep user data on an unlicensed system. That would be illegal. You rigged it to delete the data. I programmed it to be compliant, I lied. Well, mostly lied. It was a privacy feature, but weaponized. It moved the data to a cold storage partition that only I could access, effectively deleting it from their view. But to them, it would look like a digital bonfire. I need time, Richard said, sounding defeated. You have 59 minutes, I said. I'll send the DocuSign to your personal email. I assume corporate email is down since the authentication server runs on. Well, you know. I hung up. I watched old man Jenkins finally get his mower started. It roared to life, spewing blue smoke. Yeah, get it, Jenkins, I muttered, raising my coffee mug in a silent toast. My phone buzzed again. It wasn't Richard. It was a LinkedIn notification. Jard Tech Guru has viewed your profile. I bet he did. I bet he was looking at my skills section, realizing that legacy architecture meant the only thing holding up the ceiling. I went inside and opened my laptop. I drafted the invoice. Ironclad Logic LLC service, transfer of IP rights and emergency system restoration. Amount, $2,600,000 note. Payment required via wire transfer immediately upon signature. I sent it, then I sat and waited. The power of being the one who built the maze is that you're the only one who knows where the exit is. They were trapped in the dark, and I was selling flashlights for a premium. The next 45 minutes were a blur of texts from Mike. He was live blogging the apocalypse from the server room. Mike 10:15 a.m., bro, it's bad. Legal is screaming at Jard. They found the contract. The general counsel literally asked Jard if he can read. Mike 10:22 a.m., Richard is red in the face. He's talking about calling the FBI. Legal told him that since it's a contract dispute and we stopped paying, the FBI would just laugh. We literally breached first. Mike 10:35 a.m., Jard is crying. Actual tears, he's blaming the vendor. He said, you sabotaged us. Richard threw a stapler at the wall. I watched the clock. 10:45 a.m., 15 minutes until the compliance purge. My phone rang, it was legal. A woman named Sharon. I liked Sharon. She was sharp but polite. The voice of someone whose job it was to clean up toddlers' messes. Emily, Sharon said. Her voice was flat, professional. We've reviewed the documentation. Hi, Sharon. Did you catch paragraph 4? I did, and paragraph 6. And the addendum regarding IP assignment. It's ironclad, pun intended. I have a good lawyer. I see that. Look, Richard is ready to sign, but we need an assurance that the SIST M comes back online immediately. No delays. The second the wire hits my account, I push a patch that updates the license key to perpetual. The red lights turn green, business as usual. Jard can even keep his job if you haven't thrown him out the window yet. Jard is being handled, Sharon said tightly. Sending the wire now. I refreshed my bank app. It's a strange feeling, watching your net worth go from enough for rent and tacos to enough to disappear in a single second. Pending transaction, plus $2,600,000 source, Quantum Ops Inc. It's there, I said, my heart skipping a beat for the first time all weekend. Unlock it, Emily. Pleasure doing business with you, Sharon. I hung up, I tabbed over to my terminal. Command, update license status perpetual, command, cancel purge sequence. I hit enter. 2 minutes later, Mike texted, Mike, we are green, systems are booting, the dashboard works, people are cheering, it's like the end of Apollo 13 in here. I didn't cheer. I felt a sudden, crushing exhaustion, the adrenaline dump. It was over. I had won. I had humiliated the tech bro culture that tried to erase me. I had secured my retirement. But I also knew I was done. I could never work in this town again. Word spreads. I was the developer who held a company hostage. They wouldn't tell the story about how they didn't pay me. They'd tell the story about how I was dangerous. I was fine with that. I looked at the bottle of Old Crow. I deserved an upgrade. I went to the kitchen and poured the rest of the cheap whiskey down the sink. I grabbed my keys. I was going to the good liquor store, the one with the cheese samples. But before I left, I sent one last email to Jard. Subject, transition handoff body. The keys are under the mat. Try not to burn the house down. P.S. That legacy garbage just cost you $2.6 million. Might want to respect the code next time, sweetheart. 2 weeks later, I was sitting in a waiting room. Not the doctor's office, the lobby of Apex Logistics. Apex was Quantum Ops' biggest competitor. They were the Coke to our Pepsi. They were bigger, uglier, and meaner. They had been trying to poach me for years. I was wearing a blazer this time, no hoodie. I looked like a consultant. I looked expensive. The director of engineering at Apex, a guy named Stan who looked like a walrus in a tie, came out to greet me. Emily, Stan boomed, I heard you're a free agent. Rumor has it you burned Quantum Ops to the ground and then sold them the ashes. I just enforced a contract, Stan, I said, shaking his hand. Strictly business. Well, I like business, Stan grinned. Come on back. We sat in his office. He got straight to the point. We're struggling with our vendor compliance module. It's slow, it crashes. We heard Quantum Ops has a system that works. Miracle code, they call it. It's not a miracle, I said. It's graph theory and efficient caching. And yes, I built it. Can you build it for us? I smiled. I can't give you the code. I sold it to them. That's their property now. IP transfer, I respect contracts. Stan looked disappointed. Ah, right. However, I continued, pulling a new folder out of my bag. That code is 6 years old. It's written in Java 8, it's legacy. I saw Stan's eyes light up. In my free time, I lied. It was actually during the endless meetings Jard made me attend. I've been sketching out a new architecture. Rust-based, high concurrency. It wouldn't just match Quantum Ops speed. It would lap them. It would make their system look like an abacus. And how long to build it? 6 months, if you give me a team and total autonomy. No Jareds, no product evangelists. Just me and some coders who know what a pointer is. And the price. Consulting fee, I said, plus equity. Stan extended his hand. Welcome to Apex, Emily. I walked out of that building with a contract that made the $2.6 million look like a tip. Here's the thing about winning. It's not about destroying the other guy. It's about making sure that even when they think they've won, Quantum Ops technically own the code now, they're still losing. They paid millions for a Honda Civic. I was about to build a Ferrari for the guys across the street. I stopped by a newsstand on the way home. I checked the trade journals on my phone. Headline, Quantum Ops CTO demoted to special projects, following Q3 outage. Jard wasn't fired. Of course he wasn't. He probably had an uncle on the board, but he was banished to the basement. He was now in charge of special projects, which in corporate speak means don't touch anything sharp. I lit a cigarette. The smoke curled up into the gray sky. I felt clean. 6 months later, Apex Logistics launched Apex Prime. It destroyed the market. It was faster, leaner, and didn't crash when you looked at it wrong. Quantum Ops stock dropped 40% in the first quarter. They were stuck with a legacy system that they barely understood, Mainta. Ined by a team of terrified juniors who were too scared to change a line of code for fear of locking up the bank accounts again. I heard through the grapevine that Jard eventually quit. He pivoted to crypto evangelism. It fits. It's another industry where you can sell hot air and disappear before anyone realizes the balloon is empty. As for me, I'm currently sitting in my newly renovated living room. I replaced the Nag Champa with expensive candles that smell like sandalwood and vengeance. I have a 4K TV dedicated exclusively to Danny DeVito movies. I'm not happy exactly. Happiness is for people who don't know how the sausage is made, but I'm satisfied, I'm balanced. I still have the old manila folder. I framed it. It hangs in my home office right above my monitor. Paragraph 4, the paragraph that bought this house. Sometimes, late at night, I check the logs of the new system I built for Apex. I see the traffic flowing. I see the commerce of the nation moving through logic gates I designed. I think about the women like me all over the country, the invisible architects, the ones who keep the lights on while the Jareds of the world take credit for the electricity. We're out here, we're watching, and we read the fine print. So next time some 20-something in a fleece vest calls you sweetheart or dismisses your work as legacy garbage, don't get mad. Don't scream. Just make sure you own the keys. And if you have to burn the house down, make sure you charge them for the matches. This is Emily, signing off. I've got a date with a glass of Pinot and a sunny marathon.